I'm Blair Best. It's Wednesday here on The Story, and tonight, big national news. President Trump unveils a minimum 10% tariff on all imports, what local businesses have to say. Plus, in Portland, that controversial social housing resolution was discussed by City Council today. We've got the highlights and what happens next. But first, two of Multnomah County's newest commissioners are proposing changes to how board meetings operate, and that includes taking some power away from the county chair. It's our big story tonight. Now, if you've ever sat through a Multnomah County board meeting, you might have noticed some frustration from commissioners at times around the meetings being cut short, not having enough time to prepare, or even a lack of knowledge of what is going to be discussed. This week, Commissioners Meghan Moyer and Jones-Dixon introduced revisions to board meeting rules. Their changes are there in blue on this document, and you can see there are a lot of them. It's in an effort, they say, to promote a, quote, transparent and balanced government. Now, these two commissioners say the current board rules are confusing and don't align with county values. Now, for some context, how it works right now, board meetings are held each Thursday. The board also meets other days as necessary for things like executive and work sessions. But much of the power of how board meetings are run, what is discussed, when meetings end, etc., is currently up to Chair Jessica Vega-Peterson. She supervises the preparation of the agenda and can adopt executive rules related to how the commission operates. Well, Commissioners Moyer and Jones-Dixon want to change that. Some of their proposed changes include posting the regular meeting agendas a week in advance to give people more time to prep. Right now, it's posted just 3 days in advance. Another proposed change is that amendments must be publicly posted at least a day before they would be considered. There are many times even commissioners themselves have told me they didn't get word of some agenda items until the morning of. And meetings cannot be ended or canceled without a majority consent. We've seen the chair cut meetings off in the past due to a lunch break or an appointment, despite other commissioners wanting to continue. And lastly, 2 or more board members will be able to put things on the agenda over the objection of the chair. Now, those are the big ones, though as you saw in the proposal, there are many others. And this will be discussed at a work session on April 8th, so this coming Tuesday. Now, you're probably sitting at home thinking, so what? Big deal. Why do I care about the inner workings of county board meetings? It doesn't affect me. Well, that's not entirely true. Many of the things the commission decide do affect residents, either directly or indirectly. And if you read between the lines of this proposal, it certainly seems like an effort to water down Jessica Vega-Peterson's power over the commission and spreading that power out. Okay, so joining us now live are the 2 commissioners behind this, Meghan Moyer and Jones-Dixon. And since you guys are joining us together tonight, I'm going to ask you each individual questions. Some might be the same, and you can answer one at a time. Commissioner Moyer, we're going to start with you. Okay, so seeing as you both are new to the commission, what do you think of the board meeting rules when you first started? Like, has this been something you've been wanting to change from the beginning?
You know, I think my experience has been, and I don't speak for anybody else, was that I found the board rules really confusing. There's a lot of areas that don't have a lot of detail or really didn't speak to exactly how something would work. And so I had to reach out several times to our county attorney and just have her walk through, I don't know what this word means. I don't understand which things need 2 votes, which ones can be just a board action. And if I don't understand it and I have access to the county attorney, I don't think that bodes well for the public having a clear understanding of how we operate.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Commissioner Jones-Dixon, what are your initial thoughts on the board meeting rules and why do you think they should change?
Yeah, well, one of the things, thank you, Blair, for the invitation and holding the space for us. I believe Commissioner Beeson actually brought this up during his time in office, and during my time on City Council, we relied on our council rules in order to get on Gresham City Council. We relied on our council rules in order to get some of the really big initiatives, but to get them moving forward in East Multnomah County. So those are my thoughts on that.
So we kind of heard from Commissioner Moyer there, but you guys call the current board rules confusing and say they create inconsistency in implementation. I'm curious about that part. Do you have any examples of when that's happened? And what do you mean by that exactly? Commissioner Jones-Dixon, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think one of the big things, one of the questions that we've asked collectively as a board, is just like how do we get things on the agenda, for example, or what's the process, and then how do we prioritize that, and then not only for us as a board, but also for like the sheriff and the auditor and the DA's office. Commissioner Moyer, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm excited about this commission, but also all the elected officials right now at Multnomah County, is the tremendous amount of experience and expertise we're all bringing from our various perspectives. And we collaboratively wanted to make rules in a format that really allows people to bring their ideas, their expertise for things such as a briefing, maybe telling us about the important work that may be going on in the DA's office, wanting our input on a policy direction that maybe the sheriff is approaching. And also, we have a lot of expertise as a commission that we want to be bringing forward in order for this county to work the best possible way. We want to have a set of rules that really makes that clear and that process accessible to not only our elected officials, but also our department directors.
And the community as well. We want to be a high functioning team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Commissioner Jones-Dixon, one of the proposed changes is that meetings cannot be ended or canceled without a majority consent. What's behind that one? Why make this change?
I think it's just from what we've seen in the past, that hasn't happened yet since we've been on the board, just because I think we've been setting expectations that we've either the chair or her chief of staff will either start the meeting early, but still it has to be in writing so staff knows and community knows as well. And then also we put in one of the recommendations is having just time certains as well, as far as when items are brought to the board.
Commissioner Moyer, anything to add to that one?
Yeah, I think it is really an opportunity for us to show our commitment to getting the work done. Yeah. I think one of the things that was clear when we all met collectively as a board in our retreat before we were even sworn in was a commitment that, Multnomah County and our region is going through a hard time, and that may mean that we need to dig in and work harder and stay to get the job done. And I think these rules reflect that desire that, hey, we are going to do the work. And if that means we don't end a meeting until that happens and that extends through our timeline, that's fine, because the work needs to get done. And that really reflects the values of this commission.
And Commissioner Moyer, last question, we'll start with you. As our team was reading through the proposal, it seemed clear to us that part of the effort is to sort of spread out the chair's power, giving other commissioners more of a say. Is that part of the push here?
I think I want to separate the chair's roles because that's really important. The chair is the chief executive, and these roles don't speak to that role at all. It really only speaks to how the commission as a body is going to work together. And, one of the things that's in there is that every year we need to relook at how we agree to operate, because it is best practice that commissions look at their rules and the dynamics and how they want to function. So we actually build that in. But I think this is more about how do we tap the expertise and the talent of a broader range of people so that we're getting the best for the county.
And Commissioner Jones-Dixon, anything to add on your end?
Yeah, just to build off of that, we all have, yes, the chair, we all have the same power. That's one of the things that we learned going through this process with Mary, one of our consultants that's walked through this process with us. Mm-hmm. And then in addition to that, we haven't made any adjustments since Chair Kogan was in office for over the last 3 or 4 chairs. And there's this assumption that the chair has all the power she has. We all have equal power, and we all are working together to move the work of the county forward. These are recommendations. I really encourage everyone to join us next week as the whole body as we walk through these recommendations and then the briefing from Mary, from our consultant. Thank you. Thank you, Blair.
Okay, well, I want to thank you both for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your time.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Bye.
And Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson sent us the following statement today, saying in part, "I appreciate the work that Commissioners Moyer and Jones-Dixon did in crafting their rules proposal and look forward to discussions that the full board will have. The board's ability to work together and communicate effectively and transparently will be increased with updated board rules and practices, and that's something the public should applaud." Now, Commissioner Julia Brim Edwards tells us she and Commissioner Shannon Singleton are creating the county's first ever lobbying, reporting, and transparency ordinance. We want to show you, there it is. It would in part make sure the commission is hearing directly from county residents and that the commission's deliberations are not unduly influenced by outside interest groups or people. Commissioner Brim Edwards said in a statement, quote, "It is long past time that Multnomah County takes action to establish new commission procedures, processes, and rules that shine daylight on county deliberations and our decision-making process. Community advocacy and direct input from county residents is vital in informing the commission's priorities." And we also heard from former Multnomah County Commissioner Sharon Myron today. She's long been a critic of both the county chair and the inner workings of county government. And Myron had just 4 words to say when I asked about the proposal. And she said, quote, "It's about damn time." Well, now it is your turn. What do you think about the proposal to change the mechanics of how the county commission operates? Is it a good idea or not? Let us know. Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Or as always, you can hit us up on social media. Well, last week, we told you about a resolution by 2 members of Portland City Council to have the city look into social housing. It's housing built and often managed by the government, also known as public housing. And the government would be tasked with keeping a stock of homes permanently affordable for people living in Portland. Now, we like to know what you guys think about these types of ideas, and a lot of you wrote to us to tell us that you thought it was a bad idea. But that was not the case at City Council today, when just about everyone who showed up for public comment was in favor of social housing. And ultimately, Council approved the resolution unanimously. Here's City Councilman Jamie Dunphy from District 1, which is much of East Portland.
Every time we try to make a bold move on housing, whether it's affordability, stability, or fairness, we hear the same refrain: the private market won't build if you do that. So it's time for us to stop waiting on the private market. This is a supply side problem. This is not a regulatory problem. A developer recently told me that if we handed him the land and the permits for free, they still wouldn't be building in Portland today because the financiers of housing construction won't invest unless they're guaranteed exorbitant returns in the form of extremely high rents, which requires a constrained supply. That means there's no scenario in which developers will build enough housing to affect the supply problem. They're not going to risk their own returns. So if developers won't build what our city needs, then the city must explore how we do it ourselves.
A few groups showed up saying they're already working on developing affordable housing, like Habitat for Humanity and the Albina Vision Trust, and they'd like to have the city's support to grow the programs that are already in place. One of them was Reverend Heather Riggs.
My church is also a part of a coalition of faith communities who are interested in building housing on church-owned land. We are supporting a bill in the state legislature that would release pre-development funds that would unlock this land for nonprofit affordable housing or social housing. This resolution to study alternative housing financing and ownership models is a step in the right direction for helping churches like mine build nonprofit, affordable, supportive housing. However, I will say that I would prefer that we skip the study and just move forward with this model that has been amply demonstrated to work in many other places.
All 12 council members approved the resolution, which is certainly noteworthy. They liked the idea of partnering with organizations already working on affordable housing. Now, the resolution directs the city administrator to submit a report by May of next year analyzing social housing methods that could work in Portland. The city can look at other public housing models across the country and around the world and see how it might impact Portland's housing market and the burden on city government. And we'll be watching for that report. Well, coming up next on the story, the local automotive industry is reacting to President Trump's tariffs. How much more they say you could be paying for a trip to the mechanic, and what a local expert says about the president's plan for these tariffs to boost domestic manufacturing. That's next when the story returns.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We're going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy.
If you're looking at your stock market portfolio tonight, you might have some questions about that claim. Stocks plunged in after-hours trading after President Trump today unveiled new tariffs, a minimum of 10% on all imports and potentially higher for certain countries. And the stock market isn't the only place we're seeing this tariff turmoil. Locally, businesses are bracing for the effect it'll have on their prices and therefore you, the customer. Celine Stevens has been talking with local people in the automotive industry today. Celine, when are customers going to start seeing the impact here?
Blair, there's a good chance people are going to start seeing these impacts sooner rather than later. So at midnight, a 25% tariff is set to go into effect, impacting foreign-made vehicles. Auto parts also expected to face tariffs. So auto repair shops like Green Drop Garage says customers can expect to have to pay the price. And the owner says he even guesses that auto repairs will be going up by around 10%.
Oh my gosh, that is not cheap. Okay, so, can't people just buy American-made cars and avoid these tariffs?
So 25% tariffs wouldn't apply to cars made in the United States. However, Greg Remensberger with the Oregon Auto Dealers Association says that he doesn't think there's any cars made here without at least some parts being imported. Now, as for whether the president's plan to impose these tariffs to motivate manufacturing to take place in the United States would work, University of Portland finance professor Brian Adams says that something like that would take years to be effective.
All right, Celine Stevens in Southeast Portland for us tonight. Thank you, Celine. Now let's get to some of your thoughts on a story we brought you yesterday. We talked with the Oregonian politics editor, Jamie Goldberg, who uncovered a wild story in Washington County regarding Clean Water Services, which provides the county's sewer services. Hundreds of thousands in taxpayer money being spent on retreats to pricey resorts in Hawaii, and over $400,000 spent on dining in a 5-year span. That's 4 times more than similar agencies in Portland and Clackamas County combined. And all of that was happening as bills for Washington County residents were not getting any cheaper. In fact, sewer rates were raised by 4%, something that was not lost on many of you.
As a Washington County resident, I want to say thank you to the Oregonian and to you for highlighting how expensive clean water services is and how they're wasting our money. Just looking at my last bill, my sewer base charge before I ever flush a toilet or turn on a sink was $70.62, and the surface water charge was $21.94. So before I ever do anything, I'm paying $92 on my bill, and they're squandering it on expensive lunches and trips to Hawaii. Things that make you say,
is right. Joe wrote to us, "What a ripoff. Time for an investigation by County State Fraud Investigation Group. How did this authority get set up? Where is their authority? So many questions, deceit, and just unethical actions." And Jerry chimed in saying, "Why am I not surprised? These people belong in jail. I did file a complaint with the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. Hopefully, they can get through the BS." And for its part, Clean Water Services says the issues the Oregonian uncovered is something they take seriously. And the company's board is meeting next week to iron out immediate next steps, which will be shared with the public once approved. Now, if you haven't read any of these stories yet, you can find them now on OregonLive.com, and they are no doubt worth your time. Well, coming up next on the story, tech company Microsoft is celebrating 50 years in business. And tonight, we hear from President Brad Smith, who is convinced new taxes in the state of Washington are not the answer if the state wants to maintain a healthy tech sector. It comes as lawmakers there grapple with a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit. That's next when the story returns. The state of Washington has tough decisions ahead that are sure to affect taxpayers in one way or another. Lawmakers in Olympia are working to come up with a plan to overcome a projected $16 billion shortfall over the next 4 fiscal years. And between proposals that include a mix of major cuts and new taxes, the path forward is not totally clear. Much like the state of Oregon, Washington relies on its tech sector in a huge way for both jobs and, of course, tax revenue. And while Amazon may come to mind as a major Washington tech company, it's also home to Microsoft, which is celebrating 50 years in business. From personal computing to Xbox, cloud computing to AI, the company continues to transform ways that we live. Microsoft President Brad Smith sat down with Joyce Taylor recently, going on the record with why he believes tech companies and the state need to work hand in hand.
Today, we are the most technology-dependent state in the United States. 9.4% of our jobs are tech jobs, higher than any other state. California is bigger, but it's only 7.7%. Because these jobs pay so well, it's 22% of our economy. There are 3,000 startups in our state. If you look at the 500 largest startups, fully a third were started by people who had worked at Microsoft. We're all part of one ecosystem.
What do you think are the biggest threats for tech companies like Microsoft, especially in Washington?
There are proposals in Olympia that frankly would take our economy backwards and put jobs at risk, and taxing jobs in the form of a payroll tax. Payroll tax makes it more expensive to create jobs here. A so-called wealth tax would really, I think, discourage people from starting up companies in Washington state.
Based on the numbers and the data, our state's economy is dependent on a healthy tech economy.
That is absolutely the case. There is no such thing as a healthy, prosperous Washington state without a healthy and prosperous tech sector in Washington state.
And just this week, Washington Governor Bob Ferguson pushed back on a wealth tax, rejecting budget proposals from the House and the Senate, saying both propose far too much in taxes. But as Microsoft looks ahead, its future is centered on artificial intelligence. How will AI impact jobs? What about ethical development of technology and environment sustainability? Well, that's all coming up in part 2 of Joyce Taylor's conversation with Brad Smith tomorrow night on The Story. And that, folks, is the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. The good stuff is coming your way next. And don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. I'll see you tomorrow night at 6:30.